Voxari officers on the galactic frontier shuddered in horror as scout ships relayed images of the most terrifying secret in the entire empire. Humanity commanded a fleet of over 800,000 supercarriers, each equipped with planet-cracking weapons and enough fighters to black out the stars. It was 2257, and the Voxari Galactic Empire had crushed countless alien worlds under its metallic heel. Emperor Wazen's vast armada stretched halfway across the spiraling arms of the Milky Way. Trillions of beings of 1,000 races cowered in subjugation under Voxari rule. But for all its impressive size and technological superiority, the Empire had failed to snuff out the flickering candle of human defiance. Earth still remained unconquered. A quirk of galactic geography had granted humanity a few precious centuries to prepare for the inevitable onslaught. Admiral John Boyd knew it was only a matter of time before Voxari guns turned earthward. He had helped construct the hidden supercarrier fleet, overseeing the secret shipyards buried deep within the asteroid belt. 800,000 behemoths bristling with railguns, missile banks, and gravity wave cannons. Each ship carried entire armies of power-armored marines and wings of attack craft. It was a fleet to shatter empires, a fleet to make the galaxy tremble. But it was a fleet that had to remain hidden until the opportune moment to strike. When a Voxari scout vessel stumbled upon the yards, Boyd gave the order to destroy it. He watched the ship burn, fearing that the veil of secrecy had finally been ripped away. The Voxari would come for answers. Soon, Earth would face a simple choice: conquest or destruction. Boyd pleaded with Earth's political leadership to launch an all-out surprise attack on the Voxari capital, to hit them before they could react and mobilize their full might against humanity. But the politicians dithered and debated as Voxari ships edged ever closer to the solar system. They feared starting a galactic war, even as that terrible war became inevitable. Boyd did what he could to keep the fleet hidden, to buy Earth a few more precious days. Deep down, he knew what had to be done. He alone would have to make the fateful choice to unleash the supercarriers, to save humanity no matter the cost. The survival of his entire species hung in the balance. And so the stage was set for a confrontation of staggering scale and consequence. The massed battle fleets of the Voxari Empire against the might of Earth's supercarriers. If the Voxari discovered the truth too soon, humanity was doomed. But if Boyd could strike first and strike hard enough, the Voxari would learn to fear the wrath of the beings they dared to conquer. Admiral Boyd hardened his face as he keyed in the commands to mobilize the supercarrier fleet. His fingers flew across the console, transmitting the orders to all 800,000 ships scattered throughout the asteroid belt. There was no turning back now. He had made the decision to act, to put everything on the line for the survival of humanity. "All ships, this is Admiral Boyd." He spoke into the comm, his voice steady and resolute. "Converge on the edge of the solar system. Prepare for battle. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Acknowledgements flooded in from the fleet, captains and crews ready to follow Boyd's lead. The enormity of the moment hung heavy in the air as the realization sunk in. They were about to face the full might of the Voxari Empire. Light years away, Emperor Wazen stared in disbelief at the report scrolling across his screen. The humans had a fleet of 800,000 supercarriers, each one a match for his most powerful dreadnoughts. How had they managed to build such a force in secret? His advisors stood in stunned silence, the implications of this revelation sinking in. "We cannot win this fight," Wazen muttered, his usual bravado replaced by a grim acceptance of the facts. "Order the fleet to halt their advance. Maintain a defensive perimeter. We need time to assess this new threat." On Earth, news of Boyd's unauthorized action spread like wildfire. Politicians and military leaders alike were caught off guard, scrambling to respond to the sudden escalation. "He's gone rogue," one senator shouted, banging his head on the table. "Boyd must be arrested and brought to justice." But others saw the wisdom in Boyd's decision, recognizing that he had given Earth a fighting chance against the Voxari threat. "We should be rallying behind him, not condemning him," argued a grizzled veteran. "Boyd is doing what needs to be done to protect our world." As the debates raged on, Boyd remained laser-focused on the task at hand. In the asteroid belt, the supercarrier fleet assembled, a staggering sight to behold. Fighters, bombers, and assault craft were prepped and loaded into launch bays, while crews manned their battle stations with stubborn persistence. The tension between the two forces reached a boiling point when Emperor Wiesen, desperate to avoid a devastating war, sent a message to Earth demanding their surrender. "Stand down your fleet and submit to Voxari rule," Wiesen declared, his holographic image towering over the Earth's leaders, "or face the consequences." But Earth's leaders, emboldened by the show of military might, refused to back down. They fired back a response, warning the Voxari that any aggressive action would be met with the full force of their supercarriers. As both sides prepared for the seemingly inevitable onslaught, the people of Earth braced themselves for the worst. Families huddled in underground shelters while cities lay eerily quiet, the calm before the storm. In the depths of space, the Voxari military scrambled to devise a strategy to counter the human fleet. But even their most brilliant minds struggled to find a solution. The sheer scale and advanced technology of the supercarriers unlike anything they had ever faced before. Admiral Boyd knew that the fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on the outcome of the coming battles. The human fleet, born of desperation and ingenuity, would be put to the ultimate test against the battle-hardened legions of the Voxari Empire. Two mighty forces, each driven by the unyielding purpose to survive, now stood on the brink of a war that would reshape the cosmos itself. In the cold void of space, the stage was set for a conflict of unimaginable proportions, a clash of civilizations that would echo through the ages. Admiral Boyd stood on the bridge of the lead supercarrier, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The massive fleet of 800,000 Earth carriers stretched out before him, forming a spearhead that cut through the void of space. "All ships, advance formation," Boyd ordered, his voice calm but tinged with the weight of the moment. "Prepare for contact with Voxari forces." The supercarriers surged forward, engines flaring as they closed the distance to the enemy defensive line. Fighter squadrons swarmed around the massive vessels, ready to launch at a moment's notice. Boyd turned to his tactical officer. "Deploy scout ships. I want eyes on their positions." Within minutes, the advance elements streaked ahead of the main fleet, sensors probing for weaknesses in the Voxari defenses. Data streamed back, painting a picture of the enemy's deployments. Meanwhile, aboard the Voxari flagship, Emperor Wiesen paced restlessly. "Status report," he barked. A nervous subordinate approached. "Your Excellency, our scout ships confirm the human fleet's size. It's unprecedented." Wiesen's face twisted in anger. "Unacceptable. Call in every available ship from nearby systems. We will crush these upstarts." As reinforcements scrambled to join the Voxari lines, Boyd saw his opportunity. He keyed the comm to the fighter wings. "All squadrons, launch. Hit their picket line hard and fast." Thousands of fighters poured from the carriers, forming up into attack formations. They screamed towards the Voxari defenses, weapons hot. The initial barrage caught the Voxari off guard. Explosions blossomed across their front line as human fighters strafed their positions. Then, as quickly as they had struck, the fighters wheeled away. Voxari warships gave chase, engines burning hot as they pursued the retreating fighters. They pressed forward, eager to strike back at the humans. Suddenly, alarms blared across Voxari ships. The space around them erupted in a storm of detonations as they plowed into carefully laid minefields. Turrets hidden among asteroid clusters opened fire, catching the Voxari in a deadly crossfire. Wiesen watched in horror as scores of his ships were torn apart. "All remaining vessels, full attack!" he roared, refusing to accept defeat. The Voxari fleet surged forward, guns blazing, but Boyd was ready. "All ships, open fire," he commanded. The human fleet unleashed its full might. Railguns spat hypervelocity rounds, while missile batteries emptied in rippling salvos. Torpedoes streaked through space, homing in on Voxari capital ships. Voxari vessels crumpled under the onslaught, their hulls unable to withstand the rain of fire. Explosions rippled through their formation as ship after ship succumbed to the relentless barrage. Boyd pressed the attack, sensing victory. Carrier groups 3 through 7 move to pursuit positions. Don't let them regroup. Fresh waves of human ships moved up, pouncing on the retreating Voxari. Wezin's own flagship rocked as multiple impacts registered across its hull. "We must withdraw," an officer shouted over the din of alarms. Wezin nodded grimly, watching his mighty armada crumble before the human onslaught. His ship limped away from the battle, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. As the battered Voxari fleet retreated to lick its wounds, Boyd turned his attention to the next phase. "All reserve elements, move up. We're pushing into Voxari space." The titanic fleet of Earth supercarriers surged forward, unstoppable in their advance. What had begun as a defensive stand had transformed into humanity's first steps towards galactic dominance. Dominance. The human fleet surged forward, unstoppable in its advance. Emperor Wezin smacked his fist on the command console. "This can't be happening." He turned to his advisors. "Enact Protocol Omega, now!" Alarms blared across Voxari space as emergency orders went out. Fleets engaged in distant conquests received urgent recall commands. Wezin's voice crackled over comms. "All ships, return to core systems immediately. We face an existential threat." Meanwhile, Admiral Boyd stood on the bridge of his flagship studying tactical readouts. "Send in the scout ships. I want every Voxari installation mapped." Within hours, reports flooded in. Lieutenant Chen approached with a data pad. "Sir, we've identified multiple high-value targets. Shipyards, supply depots, military outposts, all lightly defended." Boyd nodded. "Excellent. Dispatch strike teams. Hit them hard and fast." Human strike forces descended on Voxari facilities across multiple systems. On the planet Korra, Marines stormed a sprawling shipyard. Gunfire echoed through cavernous hangars as Voxari workers fled in panic. Within minutes, demolition charges reduced years of Voxari shipbuilding efforts to twisted metal. Similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Supply depots exploded in pillars of flame visible from orbit. Military outposts fell silent as human troops neutralized resistance. Back on his flagship, Boyd formulated his next move. He addressed his assembled fleet commanders. "Gentlemen, we're going to split our forces. 5 autonomous fleets, each strong enough to challenge entire Voxari sector defenses." The massive human armada divided, fanning out across Voxari space. They smashed through hastily erected defensive lines, overwhelming all opposition. On the industrial world Rakmara, Wezin made his stand. He massed his remaining ships in orbit, a final bulwark against the human advance. "We stop them here," Wezin declared, "or the Empire falls." The battle that followed turned space above Rakmara into a maelstrom of destruction. Human bombers and missiles tore through Voxari formations. Carriers disgorged swarms of fighters that picked apart Wezin's defenses. Then came the Marines. Drop pods streaked through the atmosphere, disgorging power-armored troops onto the planet's surface. They assaulted key facilities with ruthless efficiency. By the time the dust settled, Rakmara's once mighty shipyards drifted in ruins. The battle for the Voxari homeworld of Korra soon followed. Boyd's carriers smashed the last defensive cordon, breaking through to low orbit. In his palace, Wezin watched screens showing human ships descending. "Activate the planetary defenses," he shouted. "Release the mechanized legions." Surface-to-orbit cannons opened fire as colossal war machines rose from underground bunkers. For a moment, it seemed the tide might turn. But Boyd was ready. He committed his full strength to the assault. Orbital bombardment craft unleashed devastating barrages, paving the way for waves of transports and drop pods. Chaos engulfed the Voxari capital as human forces overran one strong point after another. Power relays exploded in cascading blackouts. Munitions depots erupted in titanic explosions. At the Imperial Palace, Wezin's Praetorian Guard made their final stand, but they were no match for the relentless human assault. Power-armored Marines backed by towering walkers stormed the grounds. As the sounds of battle drew ever closer, Wezin slumped in his throne, A trembling aide approached. "Your Majesty, it's over. We must surrender." Weazen nodded wearily. As Boyd's victorious fleet secured orbit over a burning Koras, a transmission went out. The once mighty Voxari Empire was capitulating, offering unconditional surrender to the human forces. Admiral Boyd stood on his flagship's bridge, watching Koras slowly rotate below. A century of Voxari oppression had been broken in mere weeks. He keyed the comm to address the fleet. "All ships, stand down from combat alert. The war is..." Admiral Boyd's eyes narrowed as he watched the holographic image of Emperor Weazen flicker and dissolve. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. "It's a trap," he bellowed into his comm. "All ground forces, evacuate immediately." But his warning came too late. The floor beneath the palace trembled, a deep rumble rising from the planet's core. Sensors across the fleet screamed warnings as energy readings spiked off the charts. "Sir, we're detecting a massive power surge," Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice tight with fear. "It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Boyd's mind raced. "Get our people out of there now!" On the ground, Marines sprinted for their dropships. Engines roared to life as pilots frantically initiated launch sequences. But time had run out. A blinding flash erupted from the planet's surface. The shockwave hit with devastating force, vaporizing everything in its path. Dropships were torn apart mid-flight, their occupants scattered to the winds. In orbit, Boyd gripped his command chair as the carrier rocked violently. "Status report." "Shields holding, sir," his tactical officer responded. "But we've lost all contact with ground forces." Boyd's stomach churned as he processed the implications. Thousands of lives snuffed out in an instant. As the initial chaos subsided, a new threat emerged. From the wreckage of the orbital shipyards, a familiar figure appeared on the main view screen. "Greetings, Admiral," Emperor Weazen sneered. "I trust you enjoyed my little surprise?" Boyd's fists clenched. "You monster, your own people are a small price to pay," Weazen interrupted. "Chorus is lost to us now, but so too is it denied to you." Alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir, radiation levels are climbing rapidly," Chen reported. "The planet's tectonic stability is compromised." Boyd's mind raced. They needed to get out of here, but he couldn't leave survivors behind. "All ships, begin emergency evacuation procedures," he ordered. "Get us clear of the blast radius." The massive carriers fired their engines, straining against Chorus's gravitational pull. But as they retreated, a new threat emerged. "Incoming!" the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple Voxari signatures on an attack vector!" Boyd's eyes widened as he saw the swarm of enemy ships closing in. Weazen had played his hand perfectly, catching them off guard and vulnerable. "All fighters, launch!" Boyd commanded. "Defensive formations now." Space lit up with weapons fire as the two fleets collided. Human carriers shuddered under the impact of relentless missile barrages. Fighter squadrons engaged in frantic dogfights, weaving through clouds of deadly drones. For hours, the battle raged. Boyd watched grimly as damage reports flooded in. Carriers limped away from the fight, venting atmosphere and trailing debris. But slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. "Sir, enemy resistance is crumbling," Chen reported. "We've broken their last defensive line." Boyd nodded, but there was no joy in the victory. He surveyed the carnage around him. Shattered ships, the dying world of Chorus below. The cost had been staggering. As the final Voxari ships fled or surrendered, Boyd turned his attention to search and rescue operations. But he knew in his heart that they were futile. The ground forces were gone, along with any hope of establishing a foothold on Chorus. Then, amid the chaos, a priority transmission cut through the comm chatter. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "We've tracked Emperor Weazen's personal ship. He's making a run for it." Boyd's eyes hardened. After all this death and destruction, Weazen thought he could simply slip away. "Plot an intercept course," Boyd growled. "All available ships, form up. We're going after him." As the battered human fleet regrouped for the pursuit, Boyd stared out at the stars. The Voxari Empire would fall, no matter the consequences, and Wazin would answer for his crimes.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.